All right, guys, welcome back to the Frankie D'Astoli Show. I would like to take a second to formally apologize because here at the Frankie D'Astoli Show, we do our best to try to launch episodes on Tuesday mornings. And this week, it just did not happen. We had a Rosary and Real Estate event on Monday, and my plan was to actually take the recording of the Rosary and Real Estate event and launch that as the podcast on Tuesday so that everybody here could get an idea of what it's like to attend a Rosary and Real Estate meetup. And we also talked about two phenomenal topics. We talked about the BRRRR strategy and we talked about the birth of Jesus Christ. And my plan was, hey, I'll record on Monday with everybody in there. We had about 15 people roughly. And then I'll get that posted on Tuesday and everybody could listen in. Well, that did not happen. From the very, very get-go, we were having technical issues. The link to get on was challenging. That took about 30, 40 minutes for me to just figure out before the event started. Thankfully, we got it figured out before the event actually started. But once we got on, my mic and my webcam here was not fully connected, and the audio wasn't super great, and the quality of the video wasn't super great. But even just in general, it didn't upload properly for me to upload into a podcast. So my plan went out the window. And then I've been trying over the past couple of days to find some time to actually record an episode to get it launched as soon as possible. But just these past couple of days have been just chaotic. We have 3 refinances that, God willing, are going to go in the beginning of next week before Christmas Day. We have a closing, our 40th ever closing on, or not our 40th property, not our 40th ever. We've done a bunch of wholesale and flip stuff too. But our 40th rental property closing is tomorrow on Friday when, I'm recording this on Thursday. So it's been a chaotic week, but all in all, I wanted to make sure that we get an episode out this week and we get an episode out next week before we wrap up the year. And what I'm going to do is, because I can't necessarily give you guys the Rosary and Real Estate pod or the webinar in the form of a pod, we are going to do an episode this week that we're going to drop, and then we're going to do an episode next week on those two topics, the BRRRR strategy and the birth of Jesus Christ. And we're going to be talking about the BRRRR strategy today. We're going to talk about how my partner and I went from buying our first property to now closing on our 40th property in just 18 months. That's going to be the topic of conversation. And then next week, we are going to talk about the birth of Jesus Christ right up to Christmas Day. So welcome back to the Frankie D'Astoli Show. All right, so in 2022, I had bought my first house hack. Now, some of you guys might have heard this story before, but when I look back on my career, I look back on my investing life, what I actually see is I really see 2 decisions that I made that in the moment did not bear much fruit. Honestly, they actually costed me money, but they were very, very fruitful in the back end and now currently where I am right now. And the first decision was in 2021 when I decided to leave my high paying job in medical device sales to join a startup real estate wholesale company in Philadelphia. And I left at that time I was 22 years old. I left $100,000 plus salary. Basically, I was making, it was commission based, but I was probably making that year, if I would have finished out the year, I probably would have made about 120,000. So I left a $120,000 6-figure salary and I took a 50% pay cut to go to a new startup real estate investment company that was based out of Philadelphia. Now, at this time, my now wife Christina was living in a little town in South Jersey. We were dating. I knew nothing about that area. I went to visit her. It was really cool. I enjoyed the area. So moving over to Philadelphia was actually something that I wanted to kind of do because I knew that I wanted to start my family in South Jersey, even though at that time Christina had moved back to Jackson. We were both living in Jackson, New Jersey at the time. But I knew that I wanted to get into real estate investing. And that really came off of reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. If you have not read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I'm probably pretty much like every other real estate advocate out there that talks about it, but it really is a phenomenal book. And one of the key concepts that I got out of Rich Dad Poor Dad is you need to be willing to trade money for education. And I saw this opportunity here to do exactly that. So I traded money for education. I took a 50% pay cut. I started running around the, hood properties of Philadelphia, learning how to look at properties, learning how to, come up with a renovation budget, how to put together deal math, how to, sell and actually get a seller to sign a contract in the home on the spot. That's all things that I learned through that real estate investing company. And the second decision that I made that didn't necessarily bear a lot of fruit at the time, but bears fruit now is the first property that I bought was with now my wife, Christina. We bought a house hack in South Jersey in 2022. And we did an FHA 203K loan on that. So put 3.5% down. We went in, the listing price on it was $205,000. We went $30,000 over asking. This was in 2022, so the market was still pretty hot back then. $30,000 over asking. We actually didn't get the deal. And as time went on, like a week or two passed, and my real estate agent reached out to me and was like, hey, the buyers that were going to pick that up ended up not proceeding forward with it. Do you still want it? And we immediately jumped on it. We ended up closing on it, and we wrapped a $35,000 renovation budget into the property. So we basically were all in for about $270,000 with the FHA 203K loan. We came to the table with very minimal amount. I think we overall probably spent like $17,000 in there. We lived in the bottom unit, which was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and we rented out the top unit. And that was our first official investment in 2022. Now, again, two moves that maybe at the time don't seem super significant, although I will say leaving the job of a high paying salary and then going to a smaller paying salary job is a significant move. But it's these little things that kind of fly under the radar that you don't necessarily realize how much impact they can have. And by doing that in 2021, I learned how to invest in real estate. I got firsthand experience. I was walking 10 properties a week easily, analyzing deals, meeting other investors, wholesaling deals to them, understanding how they're exiting those properties, if they're going to flip them, if they're going to use them as rentals, why are they doing that? So I gained this extensive knowledge. I gained a lot of branches of relationships as well. And then when we buy our first property in 2022, why I always recommend house hacking, and I say this over and over again, is because it's like investing on training wheels. Now, yes, I had the wholesale piece. I knew how to actually acquire property, which is, in my opinion, the hardest part of real estate investing, especially when you're in hot markets. But the second tier now with the house hack was now I learned property management. I learned how to manage a tenant, right? I learned project management. I learned how to manage contractors and a renovation budget. And all in doing that, I'm living for half the price of what I would be if I was renting a property, and I'm building equity into the house. Now, in 2022, when we bought that property, again, we lived in that bottom unit. There was actually a tenant occupying the top unit, and we ended up telling them that they're going to have to increase rent, and they decided not to, and they ended up leaving. That's a story for another time. But we ended up getting up that top unit rented. And then as we were approaching 2024, I was having some inclinations that I was going to be leaving my job. At this point, it was in a similar realm. I felt like I was starting to trade time for money once again, like I felt in medical device sales. So I started making plans to leave my job and start my own business. And one thing that I did that was very, very important is I didn't take immediate action. And I want to be very careful about how I say that, because I think a lot of people will say, oh, well, you need to take action. And again, one of my best mentors have told me you don't need to know steps 4, 5, and 6. You just need to know steps 1, 2, and 3. Having said that, you need to be prudent, right? You need to think about what you're doing thoroughly before you make decisions. And because of me doing that, and I also, as everybody knows on this podcast, I pray a lot, right? I brought these decisions to God, and I said, God, guide me in the way that you want me to go, and really direct me so that I, do your will. And as I was, praying about this and thinking about this, I realized that if I'm going to leave this job, I need to make sure that I put myself in a good financial position to do the things that I want to do. Now, that doesn't mean I need a lot of money saved, right? I left my job with $6,000 in my savings account. That was it, right? June 1st, cut off $6,000 in the savings account, wasn't making any other money. That was basically it. But what I had to do was I had to leverage my current house hack. So I pulled a home equity line of credit on my house hack, and I pulled $30,000, and I took that $30,000 and I bought my new primary. I put a 5% conventional loan in place. It was probably about $14,000 down, $15,000 down on this house. And then I used that other $15,000, and my partner Steve and I bought our first rental property, our first BRRRR deal, in April of 2024. Fast forward now, guys, we're December of 2025, 18 months later, almost to the day, right? It's going to be the 19th, 18 months and 1 week. And we are closing on our 40th property. So 18 months, 40 houses. How did we do it? The BRRRR strategy. That's it. And today, as I did in Rosary Real Estate, I'm going to be breaking down the BRRRR strategy with you guys. And I'm even going to be sharing my screen to present the webinar that I presented at Rosary Real Estate. So if you're watching this on YouTube, fantastic. You'll get it. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, wherever it is, I'm going to obviously be extremely descriptive as much as I can. So you'll get a lot of that as well. But if you want to see the video, go over to my YouTube page and you can catch the webinar there also. But the BRRRR strategy, guys, is the fastest way to scale a portfolio. And we're going to be breaking that down in detail. Now, I'm sure a lot of people, you probably know it, you probably understand it to a degree, but the way that I break down the webinar, and a lot of these times when I do this in Rosary Real Estate, as I do it in question and answer format. So you'll see I X every single slide for each department of BRRRR. I'm asking basically 4 to 5 questions, and I'm giving responses to those questions because ultimately and most likely, those are probably the questions that you guys are asking yourself as I'm presenting things. And I want to address all those questions now. So I'm going to do a screen share here, and then we're going to get into it. All right, guys. So here is the screen share, the BRRRR method, how to build wealth with real estate using the same capital repeatedly, right? The BRRRR method, I want you to think about it in the sense of like laundry, right? It's kind of like a rinse and repeat process. You are taking a certain amount of money, you're putting it into a deal, you are renovating that property, you're renting it out, you're increasing the value through appreciation, forced appreciation, then you're refinancing it and you're pulling that same capital out and you're putting it into another deal. It's basically like if I start with $10,000, my goal with BRRRRing is that I never need to invest any more than that. I just take that 10,000, I keep rolling it. One deal, one deal, one deal, one deal. Now, there's going to be situations where that doesn't necessarily work out. We're going to talk about that. There's going to be other situations where maybe you want to go up a little higher in price points. Those are all kind of, variables, but for the most part, that's how the BRRRR method works. It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. So let's break these down here. Okay, a 5-step real estate investing process. Here's how it breaks down. Buy undervalued properties, right? What does that mean? That means if the house is worth $100,000, don't buy it for 100,000, right? You need to buy it for 80,000. You need to buy it for 75,000. You need to buy undervalued properties. Rehab to force appreciation to increase the value of the home. You do that by renovating it, increasing things like the systems, putting new flooring in there, new kitchens, all of those types of things. Rent for cash flow, right? Obviously, once that's done, you're going to establish this is a rental property. You're going to put a tenant in there, and ultimately, hopefully, the tenant's paying more than your mortgage. That difference is called cash flow. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Refinance to recover that capital, and then repeat the process. Now, again, like we mentioned, the goal is really to take that same investment and just keep rolling it over. Now, I want to do with you guys real fast a quick vocab review. This is extremely important. This is definitely one of the most important slides of the entire presentation because if you do not know the terminology, it's going to be very, very challenging for you guys to really understand what we're talking about in this webinar, but also to understand when you're talking to lenders, when you're talking to other investors, when you're talking to an insurance agent, whatever the case might be. These are all terms that you're going to need to know. So the first term is market value, which we kind of just mentioned in the last slide. Market value is what a home is worth on the market, right? So if I were going to sell my primary residence, unless I was in some sort of pinch, I would want to sell it for market value. If I know that my neighbor got $300,000, I would want to get $300,000 if my house is the same quality. If it's better, I would want more. If it's less, maybe I'll take a little bit less, but I want to sell it for market value. On market means that the properties are listed by a real estate agent. Think about the MLS, the multiple listing services. That is your property is listed to the general public, right? The general public is able to see it. It's also probably synced to Zillow and, Redfin and things along those lines, but you are able to see it. It's public. It's out there to all the real estate agents in the world. Anybody could find it and they could go and try to book a showing for your property. Off-market properties are the opposite. They're properties that are not listed to the public. They're not listed by a real estate agent. Most of the time, you won't see them on Zillow or Redfin, although, owners could do a for sale by owner on those types of sites. But you're really going to see these off-market deals in two ways. Number one is you're going to see it through wholesalers, which a wholesaler is kind of a middleman between a seller and an end buyer, right? They kind of facilitate the deal. They get the deal under contract. They sell the rights of that deal or the rights of the contract to the end buyer. The second is direct to seller, which is the best way to go about doing real estate investing, especially, BRRRRs and flips and things along those lines. Getting direct to seller is so key, and that's an off-market strategy. The fourth term here, after repair value, that is what a property is worth post renovation. So if you buy a house for $100,000 and you put $50,000 into it, what is it worth after you put the renovations in? That's considered your after repair value. The fifth term here, more these next two are kind of a little more of the tricky ones, so stay with me here. Refinance, right? Refinancing, guys, is very, very simple. It's a fancy term, but it's a very simple term here. It's basically you're replacing your old loan with a new loan issued by a bank, right? So if you have a current loan of $100,000 and you say, hey, my interest rate on this is 7%, but now interest rates are 6%, and I want to get a better interest rate, you refinance the loan. You go and get new financing on your current loan. The new financing replaces your old loan. It pays it off. and then you will have in place a new loan. Now, here's one example of that. Let's just say you owe $100,000 on your property and your interest rate is 7%, and you have 25 years left of the mortgage, right, of the term. When you go refinance it, you're going to replace that old loan with your new loan. So the bank's going to come out, they're going to appraise your house. They're going to determine what it's worth. They're going to give you a new loan amount. They're going to adjust your interest rate, which is probably why you're doing it. You maybe want to go from that 7% to that 6%, but it's a new 30-year loan. So now you added another 5 years on the loan. Now you have the lower interest rate, so your monthly payment is probably lower. That's why you're probably doing it, but you now have the additional years on the loan. So that's what you want to keep in mind for a regular straight up refinance. The next term is a cash out refinance. This is the term you need to know for BRRRR investing, right? A cash out refinance is the same as a refinance. You're taking one loan, you're replacing it with your old loan, but you tap into the equity in your home. Now you might be saying, well, what is equity? That's the next term. Equity is the difference between what the home is worth and how much debt is on the property. So a quick example, your home's worth $100,000. You owe $70,000 on your home. Your equity is $30,000. It's the difference between what the asset is worth and how much of a liability is on that asset, how much debt is on that asset. The next term, this is by far the most confusing one, so just stay with me. Loan to value. Just think about that one more time. Loan to value. Say it out loud. This is what it means. How much the bank is willing to lend you, or in other words, how much they're willing to loan you based on the value of your home. If your home is worth $100,000 and the bank says, hey, we're going to loan you $100,000 on your home, they're willing to loan you 100% loan to value. The acronym for that is LTV. But if the bank says, hey, your home's worth $100,000, we're willing to give you a loan for $75,000. Now the bank is willing to give you 75% LTV. And that is the staple for the most part for real estate investing when you go to do a BRRRR strategy move is 75% LTV. Last term, cash flow. We kind of talked about this in the last slide. The difference between your monthly rent payment or your monthly, rent roll and the monthly mortgage payment. If your mortgage payment's $1,000 and your tenant pays $1,200, you have $200 in gross cash flow. Let's keep it moving. All right, let's get into the actual steps of this now, right? Step one is to buy. And again, we talked about this purchasing below market value. Now, again, I did all of this in question and answer format. So question one, what kind of properties should you be looking for? The answer to that is distressed or mismanaged properties. Now, I'm going to talk about distressed in two forms. There's distressed in regards to the actual asset itself. Is the roof all shot and there's leaks coming through? Is the siding all broken? Is the kitchen outdated? Is it grandma condition, as they'll call it? That's distressment from the property. But then there's also seller distressment, right? Let's just say a seller is, unfortunately, this is reality, and especially in America here, they're going through divorce, right? They're going through divorce. The husband and wife are breaking up. They no longer want to deal with the property. They're not going to be living together. They don't want to list it publicly. They don't want to have to deal with a long closing. So they might want to try to sell it fast, and they'll sell it for below market value, right? That's one example. Another one might be a situation like, the seller's just getting older and they can't keep going up and down the stairs, and they don't want to, have to deal with having showings in the house, and they want just a quick sale. That's another form of distress, right? Or probate is a big one where children inherit the property and they have nothing to do with it. They maybe live out of state, things along those lines. The other one for this with properties that you want to look for is mismanaged properties. Now, personally for me, and this is just a tip, I deal with a lot of investors. I buy a lot of other investors' properties. And most of the time, they're mismanaged properties. They're either mismanaged on the rehab side, where they're either over budget or, they don't have the contracting crew to get the job done, or they're mismanagement on the tenant side, where they're either dealing with a vacancy and they don't want to renovate the property and re-rent it out, or their tenant's not paying, or they have a squatter situation. Those are kind of distressments within the seller, but also mismanaged properties. Those are the type of properties you want to look for the BRRRR strategy. The second question, where should you be looking? Again, off-market deals is huge. Go to wholesalers, go direct to seller. If you want to spend some money on marketing and you don't really even need to spend much, you could pull a list and start doing some cold calls. It probably cost you $100 if that. Or MLS value add, right? Sometimes, I still get deals on the MLS. It's definitely harder because again, that's publicly listed. We, put an offer in on a house the other day and there were 17 other offers on it. Like that's the competition that you're going to be facing. And we didn't get that deal, by the way, just an FYI. But that's some of the competition that you're going to be facing on market, but you can find some value add. One of my favorites is go on the MLS, look at 2-bedroom houses, and see what the square footage is there and see if there's any way to add a 3rd bedroom in there. That's a great way to find value add on the MLS because you're going to have a lot of people that aren't looking at a 2-bedroom. They're saying, oh, that's too small. The ARV is not going to be high enough, or any type of homeowner might want you looking for a 3-bedroom and you have a competitive edge there. Question 3, how do you know what after repair value is? Answer, look at the surrounding comparables in your area and determine what they're selling for. If you're looking at buying 123 Main Street, look around that area and say, all right, what's sold here? Can I find 210 Main Street? Did that sell for how much? $200,000. Cool. What about, 93 Main Street? That sold for 250. And what about 125 Main Street? That sold for 225. I'm going to take those. I'm going to make sure they're apples to apples comparables, right? Are they the same bedroom, bathrooms? Do they have similar square footage? Are they the same style of a house, right? I'm not going to compare a duplex to a single family. And I'm also not necessarily going to compare kind of a standalone detached house to a row home. That's another, kind of topic if you're investing in the city area. So I want to look at those, make sure it's apples to apples, and then I'm able to come up with an idea of what my after repair value is going to be. And guys, that is crucial. You need to know that. Question number 4, how do you know something may be worth looking at? So here's the formula that I personally use for BRRRR strategies. ARV, after repair value, times 75% LTV, you guys know this, loan to value, minus the repairs, all right, how much is going to cost me to renovate the property, minus holding costs. Holding costs, guys, is my monthly payments, my insurance payments, my interest payments. If I have to pay my, short-term hard money lender or my private money lender or whoever's giving me some sort of loan, I have payments that need to be made unless I bought it in cash. That's holding costs. Insurance is a holding cost. Utilities are holding costs. That's all in that realm. And then minus closing costs. How much is it going to cost me to buy this deal? Am I covering all closing costs? That's a very common thing for off-market real estate. And then when I, go to refinance this deal, I also need to pay closing costs. So I need to account for those. Just what I use, guys. And again, this is a general rule of thumb. If you're buying in some more expensive areas than I typically do, your holding costs and your closing costs are going to be higher. But I go ARV at 75%. Minus repairs, I deduct out about $10,000 for closing costs, and then I deduct out about $15,000, or I'm sorry, I deduct out about $10,000 for holding costs, and then I deduct out about $15,000 for closing costs. That will equal your purchase price. And that purchase price is essentially saying that you will be able to refinance out of that deal cleanly and you won't leave any of your own money in the deal. Remember, the whole point of BRRRRing is to recycle that capital. If your purchase price is a little tidbit, if your purchase price and your reno is already greater than your after repair value, just don't even move forward. Just stop looking at it, right? Unless it's a direct to seller play and you're able to say the seller's got some distress or it's a mismanaged property and that you could get them down on the purchase price. But if you're looking to buy it and the seller wants 100,000 and the reno's 50,000 and the ARV is 125,000, it doesn't make any sense, right? The seller's going to need to come down to about $50,000 or even less than that to make that work. Okay. Step 2, rehab, force appreciation through renovations. Question number 1, how do you know what to renovate? Base this off your after repair value comparables, right? If the house down the street got 220 and you're trying to get 220 ARV, look at what they did in the house. Does it have central AC? Does it have recessed lights? Does it have a brand new kitchen? Does it have brand new flooring, right? Does it have, is it 3 bedrooms and yours is currently 2 bedrooms, right? Things along those lines. Those are all things that you're going to need to look at. Number 2, where can you find contractors? This is a $1 million question. Finding a good contractor is like finding a wife. You got to go on a lot of dates. And believe me, my partner Steve and I, we've had some bad dates that we just would never want to go on again, right? So, but my personal recommendations here: networking events are always great because you get to see them face to face. You get to see them in a public setting. You get to see them around other people. You kind of get to know them a little bit. Number 2, referrals. This is my personal favorite. I very much am willing to work with somebody that is a recommendation from somebody I trust. That's very important. Trust to me. If I could trust you and you're referring somebody to me, I take that very, very sincerely. And that's what I really aim for. Facebook pages is okay. I wouldn't really bank on it. And then same with kind of the app Thumbtack. There's some apps out there that are good. And I've had great experiences on Thumbtack. I've had good experience on Facebook too. But a lot of times you want to for some of those contractors and just all contractors in general, try to give them a small job first. Don't give them your biggest job on the first job. I've done that before, and most of the time it's not a good idea, right? So try to give them smaller jobs. But I would say for finding them, networking events and referrals are definitely going to be your two best. And then kind of the Facebook pages, Thumbtack, things along those lines are going to be kind of second tier. Question 3, where do you get the rehab money? You want to wrap this into your loan. That's the best way to do it. And usually when you go with a hard money lender, or if you're, blessed enough to have a private money lender in your pocket, these guys will wrap it into the loan. They'll give you, if you need to buy the house for $100,000 and you need $50,000 worth of work, they're going to give you somewhere around, 85 to 95% of loan to cost on the entire property. Some private money lenders will give you 100%. They'll give you the full 150. But a lot of times they'll give you, if you need 150,000, they'll give you 140. And they'll make you come up with the other 10,000. That's your skin in the game, right? But that's where you're going to get your hard money. Your renovation money. Now, if you don't work with a hard money lender or a private money lender, let's say you're buying the property in cash, then you could get the renovation costs needed through credit cards or through other people's money. You could go raise that $50,000 from somebody else and they could put a lien on your property, or they could do some sort of promissory note, things along those lines. Definitely talk with your attorney before you take anybody's money. Number 4, how do you know how much renovations will cost? You want to get multiple quotes prior to doing the renovation. I think that's a great way to really get an idea. Get 3 contractors in there, have them all write you quotes, and really determine who seems like the best bang for their buck here, who's going to actually do the job correctly, how much is that coming out to. The more that you do this, the more you're going to really know how much things start to cost. I think that's kind of one that just over time you start to really understand. Definitely want to try to walk through the property with the contractor before submitting an offer. That's ideal as well. And even take it a step further, maybe not necessarily always before submitting an offer, but at least before you close or officially go under contract, right? Because, we're submitting offers most of the time sight unseen, but then if we're actually going to proceed to go under contract, we make sure we get in there and walk it with our contractor beforehand, right? If you're going to try to walk a property with a contractor before submitting an offer all the time, you're going to take up a lot of time. You're going to take up a lot of the contractor's time. They might not necessarily like that. So you want to kind of be cognizant of their time and your time as well. Read Jay Scott's Estimating Renovations Cost book. That's a really good one. That kind of just gives you an idea. I wouldn't necessarily even say it's so great in regards to like understanding what things cost, because that book was written a little while ago and inflation's definitely done its job. But it's good in regards to understanding what to look for. So that's a good recommendation. And then the last one, find a mentor to help. I think that's probably the best way to go. You're going to pay for a mentor service 99% of the time, but that's how it works. And the return that you'll get from it is going to be 10x, right? Like even if you paid, let's just say $10,000 for a mentor and that mentor saved you a ton of money on renovations, it's already paid off, right? So, and again, I've had multiple mentors that are paid mentors, and I've had multiple mentors that are not paid mentors. And it's more of a, seek to serve. I serve them in some way and they serve me in advice. So all of that's at your fingertips. Step 3, rent, stabilize the property. Question number 1, how much should I charge for rent? Again, similar to what we talked about in regards to how you should do your renovations, you want to base this off of the comparables in the area. If you see that down the street, it's a 3-bedroom property and it's listed for, $1,800, that's usually, maybe where you'll be at, right? You want to try to get a few comps, but if that's been listed for, 35 days, it might be a little bit high. If it immediately went off the market after a day, then you know that 1,800 is probably pretty accurate. So you want to look at comparables. You could call property management companies as well. Ask them, hey, what are you usually getting for a 3-bedroom? Say, hey, I'm a real estate investor. I have a 3-bedroom that I'm looking to acquire. I'm looking for property management. What would you say would I, possibly be getting for a 3-bedroom in regards to rent? Ask real estate agents. That's another good one. If you have access to the multiple listing service, or you just go to a networking event, find some real estate agents, ask for their opinion, ask them to send you some comps. And again, this is one thing when it comes to charging rent, make sure that the rent that you're charging is going to cover your mortgage payment. Number 1, right? if you're like, oh yeah, it looks like the market rent's $1,400, but your mortgage payment's going to be $1,500, you're going to be in the negative. We don't want to do that, right? So obviously that's kind of rhetorical, but worth saying. Number 2, how do I find a tenant? Post your listings on Zillow, Trulia, HotPads, Affordable Housing. All of those are good, but a good property management software, like that you pay for, is going to do this for you. So I use DoorLoop. Again, we are closing on our 40th house tomorrow, which makes I think 44 or 45 or 46 units, something along those lines. If you don't have more than like 10 units, I don't think it's worth buying a Door Loop or a Buildium. Those are like the two highest end property management softwares that most investors use. Apartments.com is totally free. I don't know all the ins and outs of apartments.com. They may be able to post some stuff for you. They might not. But you could also go on the sites like Zillow and, affordable housing and things like that, and you could post your units for free. So if you're like working with one house or two houses or three houses or even up to five houses, that stuff is like easy. Just go on those sites, post it. Facebook Marketplace is one that you could post on too. All of that stuff. But a good property management software will do that for you. Like for us with Door Loop, we just take our unit, we upload pictures, we write the description, we put the amenities, we put the rent price, we put the move-in date, etc. We hit a button and it shares to all of the sites. So it's very, hands-off and easy to do for that portion. Number three, what if I don't want to manage the tenant, right? Some people get into real estate investing, they don't want to deal with tenants. I don't like to deal with tenants, right? That's why I have an in-house property manager who deals with them and I just make the tough decisions. That's basically what it comes down to. But you could hire out a property management company and there's no problem doing that, right? It doesn't make you a weaker real estate investor or anything like that. You just need to be prepared for what they charge. Usually it's 10 to 12%. You might find some that do 8%, but it's pretty rare. Usually it's going to be 10 to 12%. So you just want to account for that. And that's of the rent total, right? So if the rent's $1,000 and they charge 10%, they're taking $100 off the top, right? That's not in cash flow. It's not like, oh, you cash flow $200, they're going to take $20. Like it doesn't work like that. It's on the rent. So you need to account for that. If your rent's $1,500 and your mortgage payment's $1,400 and you're hiring a property management company, you are already in the negative. Just a heads up, right? So you want to make sure you have a good cushion in there, but then use the property management company and make sure they're a good property management company. Same as how you can find contractors, networking events, referrals are the best. Number four, is it important to screen your tenant? Yeah, mission critical, screen your tenant. Use your property management software for this. Have your tenant fill out an application. Make sure you get back 3 crucial reports: the credit report, the criminal report, and the eviction report. And then also make sure that they give you references to their landlords, not just their current landlord. You want landlords previously, past 2 to 3 landlords. Make sure they tell you about their employer, what their yearly salary is. You need W-2, income pay stubs, things along those lines. The more thorough you get, the better off you're going to be. Ultimately, guys, you don't know who's really going in your house. It's the reality. I've had some people that check out so well on paper. They go in, they're awful. They don't pay rent. We're evicting them 3 months in. And then I have other people that are looking like it's a little bit shaky, but I don't really have many other options or better options. And we put them in and they're fantastic and they pay on time every month and they're great tenants. They don't ever really care and bother about things. So again, you don't know, but the more research and thoroughness you have up front, the better you're going to be able to mitigate that risk. And I'll just say a quick story. Steve and I, our first deal, she closed April of 2024. We didn't screen that tenant. Absolute disaster. She was there for 13 months. She was we went to eviction court with her 3 separate times. And she maybe paid on time in full less than 2. No, I'd say maybe like 2 to 3 times the entire 13 months that she was there. Every other time, it was sporadic payments throughout the month. It was a total disaster. Never again. All right, let's keep it going here. Step 4, refinance, recover your capital, right? This is the big step, guys. So how do I initiate a refinance? Go to a hard money lender. I've personally used Renovo, RCN, IFC. iFund Cities is IFC. They're all 3 of them are fantastic. Renovo is my main go-to. BRRRR loans as well. My buddy Faraz, he's fantastic over there as well. I've used them on dozens of loans as well. But all of them are really, really good. Like I said, I'm been using Renovo a lot right now, and I'm very pleased with how things are going. Knock on wood. Shout out my boy Joe. But there are seasoning periods usually, so you want to also ask some questions when you talk to a lender. A hard money lender, you want to ask certain questions. What are your qualifications? You want to know that. You want to know what their seasoning periods are. You want to know, in regards to, what their time's usually like. Is it, 21 days, 28 days? We're going to talk all about that in a second. But you want to get that information and definitely want to know the seasoning period as well. Usually most are 6 months. So if you buy a house in January, you're going to have to wait until June to refinance that property. Number 2, what will the lender do next? So once you initiate it with that lender, they're going to run a report on you and tell you what you qualify for. And this is going to be really in regards to your interest rate and your LTV, your loan to value, right? So they're going to look at your credit score. That's going to be the biggest thing that they're going to look at. And then they're going to look at the property itself. So if your credit score, let's just say you have a really good credit score, let's say you're at like 750, you're probably going to qualify for the best interest rate. And then if your property is, let's just say renting at 1800, but it appraised at a certain amount and the mortgage payment's only like 1200, you're going to get the highest LTV, which is about 75%, right? So those are all good qualifications. If you have a credit score at like 660, now you're going to be a little bit more dicey. You might be at a higher interest rate, and you might not be at as much LTV, depending on what your property appraises for as well. But when you talk to your lender, you're going to get those qualifications. That's very important. The second thing that they'll do is they'll order an appraisal to determine the value of your property, right? So they're going to have an appraiser go out there. They're going to take pictures. They're going to do measurements. They're going to do all that stuff, and they're going to come up with a value for what they believe the after repair value is. Now, I say they believe because it doesn't always line up with what you believe it is, right? But that's how the process goes. Number three, how long does this process take? Most hard money lenders are going to take 21 to 28 days. I've had some that were longer. I've had some that were shorter. So it all depends on how fast you move and also, how efficient their team is. Number four, what happens when I do a cash out refinance? First, you replace your old loan with a new loan that is a long-term loan, 30 years. There's a typo on this. Sorry, I wrote 30 days. It's not 30 days, I promise. It's 30 years. And that replaces your old loan. Now, if you used a hard money lender or a private money lender for your first loan to buy the property, usually those loans are anywhere between 6 to 12 months. So now when you do a cash out refinance, you're putting it on long-term debt, 30-year debt, right? And then number two, if your property appraised high enough, you will be able to pull out the equity, hopefully all of your initial investment. So if you put $10,000 into the deal and you renovated the property and you rented it out and then you refinanced it and that appraisal came back at a number that worked, then you're going to get your full investment out and hopefully even more, right? And that'd be great because then you can pivot that to multiple deals or to bigger deals. Step five, repeat, time to scale, right? After you burn out of your first deal, what do you do next? You use the recovered capital to invest in another deal, and over time, you will steadily grow your door count and increase your cash flow. And again, one thing I want to really emphasize here, guys, door count doesn't really mean much, right? You could have 100 doors, but if they all cash flow $100, it's not really that great. Whereas you could have 10 doors, and if they all cash flow $1,000, it's probably a lot better, right? Like ultimately, having a door count could be helpful if it's in a good appreciating area and you're building more equity over time, and now you have this big portfolio. And again, that's something that Steve and I chase. Like we don't necessarily chase a door count, but we know that we're buying in an area that we can really make a dent in. So we're doing it for that purpose. But overall, you want to buy good quality houses that are going to deliver good cash flow to you and allow you to BRRRR out of them. Number two, what if I did not pull out all my money in the first deal? What I would say for that, guys, learn from your mistakes, and raise more money and go buy another deal. Right? Real estate is a long game. It's not a short game. All right. I know people, a good friend of mine, he lost $30,000 on his first flip. Now he runs a multi-million-dollar company, right? Everybody takes losses. Steve and I have taken losses on properties. That's how it goes. That's part of the game. When you're in the game, you just kind of understand how it goes, right? Even look at the biggest, business moguls out there, and these, real estate tycoons. Many of them have declared bankruptcy before. Like it's part of the business. It's part of the game. Nobody takes it personally. It sucks for sure. No one's going to have fun losing $20,000, of course, but that's part of it, right? And again, how much do we spend on college, right? Spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on college, medical school, all of these things. And sometimes you walk out of there, you don't even use what you learned, right? Cool. You lost $20,000 on a real estate deal. What'd you learn? Now go apply that and go make another 40,000 on the next flip, right? Or go, buy another 5 houses and make cash flow on them. Like that's the mentality you got to have if you, don't pull out all your deal in a BRRRR deal or you have a bad deal go south just in general. The second tier to that question of what if I don't pull all my money out, even at this point, I'm sorry, I was just writing this in my perspective. Even at this point, I make mistakes and don't pull all my money out. Like I just said, right? There's been moments where I've made mistakes on deals and Steve and I haven't gotten all of our money out. We've left money in the deal. That's part of the process. It happens. Number three, what are the main reasons the BRRRR method fails? Number one, overestimating your ARV. This is a huge one, right? You're seeing comps 200, 220. You're like, but you know what? We're coming into the summer months. We'll ride the wave. We'll make our house nicer. I think we could get 240. Let's run the numbers based off 240. Badidea.com. Don't do it, right? Stick to what's there in front of you that's tangible, that's real, not what's imaginary or fugazi, like they say in The Wolf of Wall Street, right? Number two, in regards to this question of, what are the main reasons the BRRRR method fails? Underestimating reno costs. This is the killer for a lot of newbies specifically. You go in there. I remember my first ever wholesale deal, or no, I'm sorry, my second ever wholesale deal. It was like I was dealing with like a 3,000 square foot house. And I was like, yeah, $35,000 renovation budget on this. We'll be fine. We wholesale this deal. We put it out, right? Everybody's like 35,000, the laughing face emojis. I'm getting absolutely ripped on Facebook, right? Everybody's like, look at this kid posting this deal saying $35,000 renovation budget for a 3,000 square foot house. It was really like more like $80,000, right? And one of my mentors at the time basically said, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. So when you think you know your renovation budget, just double it and you'll be a lot better off, right? So if you're brand new and you're walking a house, you're like, oh, it's probably like $30,000. Just aim for 60, right? That's probably what it's actually going to be. And then the third part of this question, not qualifying enough for a higher LTV. I think this is a big one. People run their numbers based at ARV times 75% minus repairs, minus holding costs, minus closing costs, like we talked about. But then you go to your hard money lender on the back end for the refinance, and they basically say, hey, you're only actually qualifying for 70% LTV because your credit score is a little bit low, or your debt service coverage, which means your rental amount isn't high enough in regards to what your mortgage payment is going to be. You only qualify for 70%, and that kills a deal for people. That 5%, right, on 100,000 is $5,000. That might have been what you thought you were getting back out from your initial investment, and now you're not, right? So that's a big one. Make sure that you keep your credit score up. Make sure that you're getting good rents and you're running your numbers properly, and you'll avoid some of those issues there. All right, I'm going to do a little example. This might be my last slide here, but let's just say you buy a property. Oh no, there's one more after this. I know for a fact. Let's just say you buy the house and you buy it for $100,000 for using round number purposes, using a hard money lending loan, and they're going to give you 90% LTC. Now, LTC, guys, this wasn't in the vocab, but LTC stands for wow, I can't believe I drew a blank there. Loan to cost. Loan to cost is what it stands for, which basically means if the total cost of the project, the purchase price and the renovation come out to $150,000, they're going to give you 90% of that, right? So let's just say for this example, you have a down payment of $10,000, but you also have $7,500 in closing costs. So your total payment up front is $17,500. Let's just say you're rehabbing it and you're putting $50,000 into it. You are going to place a tenant in there for $1,800 a month. And when you refinance it, the appraisal comes back at $225,000. Now, here's the repeat process, and here's the formula that we're going to use for the refinance. Now, I'm going to make a differentiating factor here, but this is for the refinance. You have an ARV, your appraised value of $225,000. You times that by 75% loan to value because you have a good credit score and you get good rent. You minus out your loan amount with your hard money lender, which is $140,000. That's how much they lended to you on day one when you bought the house. From there, you subtract out your closing costs, which on the refi side, because the property is valued a little bit higher, is going to be a little bit more than on the purchase side. So you're going to subtract out $10,000 for your closing costs, whereas on the purchase side, it was $7,500. That's going to give you $18,750, which is awesome because you put $17,500 into it. So overall, you got your entire investment back, and you also made $1,000 on top of it. Now you're going to take that $18,000 and you're going to put it into your next deal. But if you've been paying attention, you would understand that there's something missing from that formula. Yes, you just cashed out $18,750, and that's awesome. But what about the 4 to 6 months that it took you to renovate that property, where you were paying $1,000 every single month in your interest payment and utilities? Right now, that $1,000 over 4 months was $4,000. If you really on a spreadsheet took your numbers, you would have to do $18,750 minus $4,000, which would really mean that you made $14,750, which would actually mean that you technically left $3,000 in the deal. But overall, the way that you look at this is now I have $18,750 back in my pocket. I could put that into another deal. The follow-up question to that is, but does it cash flow, right? And it has to cash flow, and I'll tell you why. A hard money lender would not issue a loan if the property didn't cash flow. If your mortgage payment was going to be $1,500, but you were only collecting $1,400 in rent, or in this example, if your mortgage payment was going to be $2,000 and you were collecting $1,800 in rent, the hard money lender would never issue that loan because they understand that you're not the one that's technically paying the loan, although your name's on it and you're responsible for it. It's really your tenant who's basically going to be making that payment. So they wouldn't be able to do that. They would have to say, hey, you need to take a lower loan to value. We can't give you 75% of the value. We need to give you 60%. And again, that could be detrimental for money that you're getting back but they need to make sure it cash flows. But let's take it a step further. What is the mortgage payment on this property, right? So it appraised for 225. You take that times 75% loan to value. That gives you 168,750, which means that the bank is willing to give you $168,750 loan to you based on your property. Now, what you can do is exactly what I did. You put that in a mortgage calculator, or you ask your lender during the refinance process. But let's just say you're predicting out like I usually do. You put it in your mortgage calculator and you add your interest rate, your property taxes, and your insurance. So let's just say we went with a 7% interest rate, which right now is about standard. $1,500 in homeowner insurance and $1,500 in property taxes. Again, this all depends on where you live, right? In Rosary Real Estate, we have many people that are from Staten Island, and they ain't getting $1,500 in insurance or property taxes, right? They're getting more like $15,000. So it all depends on where you live and where you're analyzing deals. But that would give you a mortgage payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance of $1,372.70. Now, in our example, we said that you're renting it out for $1,800. So 1,800 minus $1,372.70 gives you a gross monthly cash flow of $427.30. That's how you break down so that you know what you're getting every single month in regards to mortgage. Last slide here. That sounds awesome. Why isn't everyone doing it? And I've broken this down into 5 reasons. These might resonate with you. They might not. Number one is it's hard to find deals that pencil. I think that's the biggest problem for right now for a lot of people. And what I would say to you is you need to start looking outside of your market, right? Real estate's a little bit different. This is a con in regards to stocks. You can buy a stock anywhere in the world, right? Real estate, you could buy property anywhere in the world, but it requires a lot more work than just looking up a ticker acronym and saying I'm going to buy it for $100, right? There's a lot more that goes into that. You need to search, you need to find good markets. Number two, fear of messing up. I think that's a really big one. People are afraid of losing money. Again, we go to college, we spend tens of thousands of dollars. There's usually never fear with college. It's accepted. It's, congratulated. It's, wow, you're going to college. And nowadays it's like you didn't go to college. People look at you like you have 3 heads. You didn't spend $50,000 to go get an education that you're probably not even going to use. What are you doing? Why wouldn't you do that, right? But we're afraid of putting $10,000 into a real estate deal that could potentially make us money, but at the very least will give us an actual education where we could go and use that to actually make money in the future. That's where we're messing up, in my opinion. That's the mess up, not you having fear of messing up. So don't have fear of messing up. I would say get in there, get it going, learn. You're going to learn regardless. Number 3, not having the time to commit. We talked about this on the last Rosary and Real Estate event that we hosted where we talked about lending. A lot of times if you don't have the time, but if you have the money, you can find people that have the time. Now, if you don't have the time and you don't have the money, you need to make some adjustments there. Number 4, analysis paralysis. People that know it's a good deal, but just are too deep in the weeds, right? Saying, well, what happens if a hurricane runs through and, wrecks the house? Like, what happens next? Like, that's the level that some people are getting to where they know they're doing the deal right. They're analyzing it correctly. They know they're going to make money on it if they do it and execute. It's just that paralysis that's literally holding them back. And then the last one, no team to execute. You don't know lenders, you don't know insurance agents, you don't know wholesalers or real estate agents, things along those lines that are holding you back. Simple answer, guys. Talk to somebody like me. Talk to, other people in your area that are investing in real estate. Go to a networking event. That's how you start building out your team. Yep, that was it. That's Our Lady of Guadalupe. Shout out to Our Lady of Guadalupe. That's how we kicked off Rosary and Real Estate Part 2, where we talked about the birth of Jesus Christ. So I'm going to stop doing a screen share here. Cool, guys. Well, we are well over what I usually run these for. Usually it's about 30 minutes, and we're at 48 minutes. So I hope you guys got a lot out of that. If you liked the video, if you felt like it was helpful, please, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, things along the lines, please feel free to give me a rating. Feel free to write a review. All of that stuff is really helpful. It helps with engagement. And also, I just really enjoy hearing what your guys' thoughts are and what you felt on that. So listen, we're going to have one more episode of the Frankie D'Astoli Show in 2025, and it's going to come out next week. It's going to be on the birth of Jesus Christ. We are going to go through the visions of Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich. Now, this is actually something that I did last year, but we're going to look at it from a little bit of a different lens on this episode. And I think it's really great to kind of be able to visualize that before, the birth of Jesus Christ, the Nativity, Christmas Day. So that's the plan. We're going to launch that beginning of next week. And I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. And most of all, guys, I hope you guys take action. The BRRRR strategy, in 18 months has changed my life from one property to 40 properties, and it could do the same for you. I promise you guys, I'm not special. I've made a few decisions in my past that didn't necessarily seem like they maybe made the most sense to a lot of people, but in the end, they set the foundation, and everybody has that opportunity to do that. So go out and execute. And again, pray the rosary, buy real estate. Don't do what makes you happy. Do what makes you holy. I'll see you guys next week.